I stopped coding games, and that's probably for good. Last autumn I was still building my cave mining roguelike, and it was making good progress, and the game was actually pretty fun to play. It took me around 4 months to get to this stage you're seeing right now, and well, I basically made everything by hand. I wrote the code by hand, I wrote the level generator by hand, and I made all the art assets manually in Krita. And that was all fine and good, but the problem was that I also had a full-time job as a software engineer. So when I got off work, I had no interest and no energy in writing code anymore once the progress in the project started slowing down. At that point, I basically no longer wanted to work on the game, and pretty quickly I ended up just completely stopping working on the project. Basically just abandoned the project. Now at this point I had been making games for around 6 years, or maybe even 7, not quite sure. Anyway, I've had been studying in university computer science and making games on the side. And that was fine. I feel like when you're in university your days are pretty unstructured, so you have a lot of time to still do your own projects, because while you're studying hard, you still get to choose how you spend your time and your energy. But when the full-time job hits, it really hits differently. You just have to be there for 8 hours, and even if you're not working that hard most of the day, at least I find most people actually spend a lot of time on meetings and just planning stuff and then zoning out looking at walls. It still drains you the whole time. So when you finally get off work, you don't have energy to actually build anything anymore. And that's kind of rough when the thing you want to build requires you to write even more code, which you have been doing for the full day at your job already. So basically, I was gonna quit. I was probably gonna find another creative outlet. I'd been learning to play guitar, so maybe I would have started just composing songs as my main hobby. I still do play guitar and I do plan to make music for games, but that's not quite how the story ends yet. Basically, before completely giving up, I decided to do one more experiment. I downloaded Claude Code, and I decided that I'm gonna see what it can do. This wasn't something where I decided to become a vibe coder or anything. I just wanted to see how much it could do for game developers, mostly out of curiosity. So the first experiment I wanted to run was to see how long it would take to make the same game with AI tools that I had made previously by hand. So basically I went and built the same game. So if this seems familiar, I was basically just making the same game again, this time without writing any of the code by hand. Now, while it had taken me about 4 months to build the original version of the game, this time it took 10 days to get further along than I had ever been. So basically, this version, I think we're currently at about 14 days, but around the 10-day mark, it was clear that the project had made more progress than the original one. You can see, while the graphics are not as far along, they definitely look worse than in the original, but the lighting system is much more advanced. The upgrade systems and items we have are much more well developed. There are many of these kinds of upgrades that you can add to the weapons. So the weapon system is definitely more advanced and better functioning. So you can see the upgrades here in action. They are very modular and they work great. Upgrade systems like these take a lot of work by hand. It's very challenging to develop very modular systems that scale well with any number of upgrades. And with Claude, it's an afternoon or maybe a couple of days of work at most. So my initial assumption, of course, was that you know, yeah, you could get a prototype down, that's fine. I'm sure AI can make a fine prototype, but after that you're gonna be stuck. Like, it's not gonna be able to manage a bigger project. And you know, first it seemed that way, but after I got the configs and all the setups and the agents working with intelligent workflows that were really designed around working with the AI tools, to my surprise, it actually works just fine, at least on this scale of a project. I'm sure if you're designing some kind of massive software or some kind of AAA scale game, then you might run into issues for sure. But I think for any indie scope game, you're gonna be just fine using AI tools for the code. Eesh. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I might still need to tweak the upgrades and balance a little bit. Now, the second problem was of course AI Slop. I don't necessarily want to just make AI Slop, even if it's like more fun for me to make games as a creative hobby where I don't have to code. If the result is just AI Slop, then maybe it's not actually worth it. But after trying it out, I actually came to think that AI Slop is not when you make things with AI. AI Slop is when you let AI make the thing. Now, what's the difference there? The difference is who is you know, driving the car, who is the designer, who's making the decisions. If you have a vision in your head of what you want the output to look like, and you get that exact same vision into your game engine, then does it matter if it was made by you or by the AI? If the output, if the result is exactly the same, then does it matter? As long as, you know, the design of the output was made by you and the AI did not influence it. So that's kind of the thinking behind why I think you can totally use AI tools to make games without making AI slop. And you know, maybe that's cope. Maybe I'm just saying that because I'm lazy and I don't want to keep coding. Possible. Don't really care. But as long as, you know, I guess we'll see. Maybe my games will be slop anyway, even if I make them by hand. Maybe it's just my game design that could also be the problem. There's no reason to assume AI is making the games into slop. It could just as well be a lack in design skill for me and for anyone else who is, you know, posting their games on Steam. I guess, you know, of course, lowering the bar of how easy is it to post games online and on Steam and on other platforms, you know, by realities and by statistics and, you know, thinking about it from kind of math point of view, and logically even, it's clear that it's going to cause worse quality games to enter the market, and it's going to let unskilled developers publish more games, which will mean that the average quality of a game goes down and there will be more bad games on the market. So, you know, AI slop could just be unskilled developer slop or something like that. Now, of course, many developers are outsourcing their thinking and their designing to AI. I think that's where the real AI slop is at, and I think that's a mistake I definitely, but you as well, want to avoid. Now, this is what I've decided to do, at least for now. I'll be making AI games as long as it's fun and as long as I feel like the games I can make with AI are good enough, are you know, as good as the games I would be making if I were coding them by hand. If I have to sacrifice the quality, then I'm probably just gonna switch to something else. For me, the goal is always to make the best things you possibly can. I don't care about what tools I use, I think the output is the only thing that matters. Now, of course, as a solo developer, you cannot make as good games as, you know, AAA studios, which means that, you know, if I wanted to make the best games possible, then should I just quit because I cannot do that alone? But I think as indies we have to take a different approach. We have to make games that are better in some way. They don't have to be better overall, they have to be better in some specific way. There are only so many AAA games that can be built in the world. They are expensive and they need to make profit, so if every single company in the world made AAA games, then they would go bankrupt because there wouldn't be players buying so many games. This means that AAA games need to cater to enough people that they can make profit, which means that they have to make such games that are appealing to a wide audience, like to 1 million players or more. Indie games don't have to do that. I can make games that appeal to 2,000 people who end up buying the game. If 2,000 people buy my game that I spent 2 months making, that's worth it to me from a economical point of view. Of course, I have a full-time job, so I don't have to care at all about the commercial success of my games. But for anyone, if you can make 5 games a year and each one of those gets 5,000 sales, then you can do that. You're very, very wealthy at that point. And the lesson there is that you should not try to make games that everyone wants to play. You should take your weirdest ideas, your most kind of out of the box ideas, you know, something completely wild and different, and try to make that idea as strong and compelling as possible. That's where the advantage of indie developers is. It's not in trying to make, you know, this massive game that everyone would want to play, that is kind of a generic idea, but you try to stand out on the market because your execution is so big. I think that's a recipe for disaster for solo developers and even small indie teams. So yeah, that's the plan. I try to not make AI slop. I try to find some unique, interesting ideas, and I try to explore those to their fullest potential. That's my goal with my next phase of my journey of trying out AI game development. If you wanna try making AI games as well, if you wanna look at my stuff and talk to me about making games, check out the link in the description.